Wilhelm Wundt, father of psychology. The story of psychology, as a distinct scientific discipline, often begins with one remarkable figure: Wilhelm Wundt. Born in 1832 in the quiet village of Neckarau, near Mannheim, Germany, Wundt would go on to change the way human thought and behavior were studied. He is widely regarded as the father of modern psychology, not because he was the first to ask questions about the mind — philosophers had done that for centuries — but because he insisted that psychology should be studied as a science, with systematic observation, experimentation, and analysis. His life's work was nothing short of an intellectual revolution. It established psychology as an independent field, separate from philosophy and physiology, and laid the foundation for generations of researchers. Wundt's early years revealed his sharp mind and relentless curiosity. He trained in medicine at the University of Heidelberg, and it was there that he encountered the scientific rigor of physiology. Under the influence of Hermann von Helmholtz, a pioneer in sensory physiology, Wundt became fascinated with how the human senses connect to mental experiences. Yet, unlike many of his contemporaries, Wundt did not want to stop at the physical processes of the body. He longed to understand the processes of consciousness itself, the thoughts, feelings, and perceptions that defined human experience. His unique ambition was to unite the physiological with the psychological, to bridge the inner world of the mind with the outer measurements of science. In 1879, in the university town of Leipzig, Wundt achieved what many now see as the defining milestone of modern psychology. He established the first laboratory dedicated solely to psychological research. This small, modest space soon became the epicenter of a new science. Students flocked from across Europe, the United States, and Asia, eager to learn from the man who promised a scientific understanding of the mind. The laboratory's projects were diverse, but shared one common aim: to measure and analyze conscious experience. Using experimental methods, Wundt and his students explored sensation, perception, reaction time, attention, and memory. For example, a typical experiment might involve exposing a participant to a flashing light, or a sudden sound, and then carefully recording the time it took for them to respond. Such simple tasks, Wundt believed, could reveal fundamental truths about the structure of consciousness. Wundt's method, called introspection, was central to his psychology. However, his version of introspection was not the vague self-reflection that philosophers had practiced for centuries. Instead, Wundt's introspection was highly controlled and systematic. Trained observers were asked to report their conscious experiences in response to carefully designed stimuli, under strictly regulated conditions. By collecting and comparing these reports, Wundt sought to uncover the basic elements of consciousness, the raw sensations and simple feelings out of which more complex mental processes were built. He often compared this to chemistry. Just as chemists broke down compounds into their fundamental elements, psychologists could analyze mental life into its most basic parts. This approach came to be known as structuralism, though Wundt himself did not use that term extensively. The idea was that the mind could be understood by studying its structure, its elemental sensations, perceptions, and feelings. To Wundt, the goal of psychology was not to speculate about the unconscious, or to make grand theories about human behavior, but rather to carefully describe and analyze the components of conscious experience. In his massive work titled Principles of Physiological Psychology, He laid out this vision, combining insights from physiology with a clear program for psychological science. Yet Wundt was not only concerned with the laboratory. He also developed what he called Volkspsychology, or cultural psychology, which examined how higher mental processes, such as language, myth, and custom, developed within societies. Wundt recognized that certain aspects of human psychology could not be studied in the lab. Complex mental functions, he argued, were shaped by culture, history, and social life, and therefore required comparative and historical analysis. This dual focus, on the controlled study of basic processes in the laboratory, and the broader study of culture, demonstrated the breadth of Wundt's vision. He saw psychology not just as a science of individual minds, but as a discipline that could illuminate humanity itself. Wundt's influence spread rapidly. Students trained in Leipzig carried his methods across the globe. In the United States, figures like G. Stanley Hall and Edward B. Titchener popularized and expanded his ideas, although often in slightly different directions. Titchener, for instance, took structuralism to new heights, though some argue that his interpretation simplified Wundt's more nuanced vision. Even those who later rejected Wundt's approach, such as the behaviorists, did so in response to the standards of scientific psychology that he had set. Without Wundt, psychology might have remained a branch of philosophy, speculative and unanchored. Instead, it became a discipline defined by experiment, measurement, and empirical rigor. Of course, Wundt's psychology was not without its critics. Many argued that introspection was too subjective and unreliable, as individuals' reports of their inner experiences often varied. Later schools of thought, such as behaviorism in the early 20th century, dismissed Wundt's focus on consciousness as unscientific, preferring to study only observable behavior. Others pointed out that Wundt's structuralist approach did not fully account for the complexity and fluidity of mental life. Still, even these criticisms testified to Wundt's enduring impact. His ideas were the foundation against which future movements defined themselves. Beyond his intellectual achievements, Wundt was a remarkable figure of discipline and productivity. Over his long career, he published more than 50,000 pages of scholarly work, ranging from experimental reports to cultural analyses. His writings filled multiple volumes, and his energy seemed inexhaustible. He was also a dedicated teacher, known for his demanding yet inspiring mentorship. For nearly half a century, Leipzig was the destination for anyone serious about psychology, and Wundt stood at its center. When Wilhelm Wundt died in 1920, psychology had already taken many new directions. Freud's psychoanalysis was reshaping the study of the unconscious, behaviorism was gaining momentum in America, and Gestalt psychology was emphasizing holistic perception. Yet all of these developments were possible because Wundt had established psychology as an independent scientific discipline. His legacy lies not in any single theory, but in the enduring conviction that the human mind can, and must, be studied with the same rigor as the natural sciences. In reflecting on Wundt's psychology, one sees the story of a pioneer who dared to ask how the most private and elusive of all realities, consciousness, could be brought into the light of science. His laboratory in Leipzig was more than just a room with instruments. It was the birthplace of a discipline that continues to evolve and expand. Even today, When psychology encompasses neuroscience, cognitive science, social psychology, and countless other branches, the spirit of Wundt's project endures. It is the spirit of inquiry, precision, and belief that the mysteries of the mind are not beyond the reach of human understanding.